the school prescribes to what's called PBIS, it's for Positive Behavior Intervention System. And essentially it's like a marketed curriculum for classroom management and school life management. I'm going to talk generally about positive behavior interventions. I'm not necessarily using strictly the marketed PBIS model, but just so you know, if you are curious about that, you can look that specifically up. And it's a good model that we use. And I'll briefly touch on restorative practices when we're just talking about school discipline in general. It's a philosophy that I use to handle school discipline. As a classroom teacher, there's not as much involvement. You don't have as much involvement as that as, say, administration would, but we'll touch on it because it's sort of a philosophy around school discipline that's more equitable and fair, particularly for students of color, which is, of course, important. Go ahead. Yeah, that's a really weird clicking system. So that's right. So generally what you want to do, and as you saw in Cassie's classroom, just say drink. I don't know what they call you. Drink. You want to set really broad, short classroom rules. And you don't want to have very many of them. So 3 to 5 is the sweet spot. Anything more is there's just too many, unless it doesn't cover enough behavior. So the 3 typical ones are usually be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. You can pretty much cover any behavior that you can think of under those 3.
Am I being safe?
Right, so you would say, are you being safe? Is it safe to run? What could happen if you run, right?
Don't run, it was
Be safe.
yeah, sorry.
No, it's totally accurate, right? And then I like to add these 2 because I think there's a lot of things like that can fall under be caring. It's also respectful, right? But particularly I think caring takes it a step to be like, do you go out of your way to be kind to others? And I like the idea of being a learner because you can use things like, did you go to the bathroom too much? Is that being a learner, right? Or like, right, did you do your homework? Is that being a learner, right? We do things like, did you eat snack? Because learners need to eat snack because you're going to fuel your brain to be a learner. So really, I've never come across a behavior that I had to encounter that I wasn't able to link to one of these. So they cover everything. That way you're not listing out like every behavior you can possibly think of, right? Don't put your shoes on your head, right? That's not respectful of me as a teacher, right? So keep them broad and short, and make sure your kids know them. So we do blanketed school rules. These are also our school rules, and all the teachers use them in their classrooms. And that way, any kid from kindergarten to 6th grade, I can say, what school rule did you break? Or what rule, they know all of them. And they're the same throughout the whole grade, and they'll be the same the whole time they're in school there.
And this is really good because if a whole school uses the same rules, then another teacher can feel like they can enforce the rules with your students. And if we talk about collectivism versus individualistic cultures, right? Like my mom, she would never discipline someone else's child.
And we focus on that in our school, right? That the school, they are all our students. We are all responsible for them and their behavior. It's not Mrs. Singh's students and Mrs. Zimmerman's students, it's our students. And anytime you see a student not breaking a rule or following a rule, we have a school-wide academy. And so then any teacher can reinforce and any teacher can correct. I think that's really helpful, especially on the playground or in communal spaces like the library or the cafeteria or the playground or the office even, right? And it holds students responsible for their behavior in any setting.
And when you have children that come from collectivist cultures who are used to their aunts or uncles or far-off relatives disciplining them, it won't be that strange to them. They won't look at you like you have 5 eyes because they're not your teacher.
Yeah, correct. And for students who are more, it becomes natural to them to be talked to by the adult, and it gives all adults a sense of responsibility and all students a sense of responsibility on campus, right? Like, my behavior expectation is the same no matter where I am. And that's helpful for students.
Definitely, especially students that probably don't have consistency in terms of behavioral reinforcement at home, but at least in the classroom and in school, they have it there.
So I know that it sounds silly, but behavior expectations have to be taught to students the same way that you would teach math or reading or writing, right? Students don't know what's expected unless they're taught. And so you have to systematically and effectively teach behavior management and behavior expectations to students all the time. But in addition to that, a successful management class, particularly classroom management, it relies that your student and the teacher have a relationship or an attachment that the teacher can leverage, or some adult on campus has an attachment with that student that they can leverage for positive. Because if your student feels isolated, if your school feels like a place where they don't belong, that's not for them, that's for other people, they aren't going to buy into anything. They're just not. It doesn't matter how motivating your reward system is, how great your economy is. If they don't have a positive relationship with an adult at your school, they aren't going to buy into it. And that's not always their classroom teacher. It can be somebody else. But the truth is that attachment is what you leverage at a school site to build good behavior, right? If they don't have that, then you don't really have anything. You okay?
Yeah, just looking for my pointer. No problem.
Oh, we're good. We're right back for the next slide. So when we talk about teaching the expectation, there's so much behavior that you would have to teach that can feel a little overwhelming. So we do a matrix for classroom behaviors and for school-wide behaviors. And this is how when I teach my new teachers, my fresh out of credentialing teachers, tell me about your classroom management. They're like, well, I'm gonna give stars, right? Like it's not a systematic, organized way to teach behavior. And so what I ask them to do is something like this, right? So on the top you'd see our classroom rules, right? I'd say I'm respectful and I'm responsible. And on the other side would be all the times of your day where you would want to teach something, right? So if this was a younger grades, it'd be like, carpet time, here's what I expect. This is how you show me you're safe. You are safe by, right? And then this is taught, carpet time is taught as a lesson at the beginning of the school year. And retaught again the next day, and retaught a week after that, and then maybe after Thanksgiving break is retaught, and then retaught after Christmas break. And then anytime you feel like you need to pull this lesson out, you reteach it again, right? So why am I sit in my square? Well, why do I sit in my square? Because if I'm laying on somebody else's square, I'm not being safe, right? And I keep my hands in my lap because if I put my hands down, if somebody needs to walk through the aisle, you'll get your finger stepped on, and that will be an ouchie, and you'll hurt yourself, right? So this is how we show we're safe on the carpet. And here's how I show I'm respectful. This is what I expect every time you come to the carpet, right? My eyes are on the teacher. My hands are to myself. My ears are listening. If I have a question, I raise my hand. So you're really explicit about what it looks like. And the same, like, I participate and follow directions quickly. So I don't just sit. I'm participating in the classroom. And when the teacher tells me to do something, I follow those directions. And then you can have caring, right? When I'm caring, I'm listening to my friends, or I use kind words, right? And I'm a learner would be something like I participate in the activities. And this is a lesson, and it's taught in the classroom, right? And then this is a different lesson, right? Center time or like learning centers would be another lesson that you explicitly teach to your students in the classroom. Maybe not on the same day, or maybe you
move it around, right? But you can't hold students accountable for something that you haven't taught them. So you wouldn't say you wouldn't say you didn't ask to go to the bathroom if you haven't told students that they have to ask to go to the bathroom, right? And that's actually that happens. And some students, especially like early young grades or students who come from other countries, just will leave the classroom because that's allowed, right? That's expected of them. And I've had office referrals where they just walked out of the classroom and I didn't know where they were going. Well, did you tell them that you have a bathroom pass, or did you tell them to explain that yet, right? And oftentimes the answer is no. So it has to be.
Sometimes the opposite. They won't say anything and they'll sit in their chair and sweat themselves.
Oh, that happens too, right? That happens a lot in kindergarten because they don't know that there's a bathroom. They don't know there's a bathroom in their classroom, right? Especially, it's really hard when you get kids coming in mid-year because you've already taught all your classroom procedures, but it has to be explicitly taught to newcomers too. And that's something that you can have like a classroom buddy for, or like classroom procedures, right? Is something. Classroom procedures and classroom management sort of go hand in hand in the fact that one really helps the other, right? So that would be your classroom procedures, like how to go to the bathroom is a classroom procedure, but it's reinforced by your classroom rules. And if you don't have a strong procedure, then you end up having a ton of classroom management problems because kids don't know what to do. They go hand in hand. So if the smoother your classroom runs, but with your classroom procedures, the less behaviors you have, right? The less time I'm interrupting myself to talk to you, the less time I'm interrupting my teaching to let you go to the bathroom or let you tell me what you did this weekend, right? Which happens. If you don't have a procedure for how kids raise their hand, or if you don't have a procedure for how kids come in on Monday morning and share with you about their weekend, which they're always going to want to do, right? You're wasting time. And when you waste time, or you're not on topic, or you're not teaching engaging students, classroom behaviors go up, right? So that's how behavior and procedure go together.
Oh, sorry. This way. Oh.
So again, right, we have to teach, reteach, and be really clear about what our expectations are and what it means and looks like, sounds like, feels like to be safe, respectful, responsible in the classroom. And then when kids do it, right, so right now you're listening to me and I really like that, and I would praise, reward, whatever your system is. So I like positive reinforcement a lot, extrinsic and praise. I'm giving praise for following the rules, and I'd also give you generally something that has to do with our school economy as a reward. Now I can also, a good classroom management system would also turn that praise back into internal motivation. So I'd say, particularly for a student who struggles, I'd say wow, you did, after my lesson, during work time or during quiet time, I'd be like, today you did so great. Here's a gotcha ticket, and then I'd ask you, how did it feel? Right? I'd ask that to anybody. How did it feel today? Right? Did it feel good to be successful? What did it feel like when you got that answer right and you got to share it out? I'd ask them that, right? So I'm giving them language and pointing out their internal motivation, because a lot of them kids will have it, but don't know how to recognize it or express it. So you have to give them that also, right? Not only did you get my praise, and you also got our school economy, you got money, right? But also, how did that make you feel? Let's internalize that. Was today better than having to go to the office, or which was it worse, right? And anytime you can have them give words to their feelings, help, right? That's how you get the internal and external motivation together. But praise. And we don't do, like I said, at my sites, I do not allow negative attention to be paid, right? So I don't allow make clip charts where students can move down in behavior. I would allow it if you're only allowed to move up. Great, that's fine with me. But anything where there's like a red, yellow, parent contact clip, that is really, can I have some skills? Yeah. That is really reinforcing bad behavior is truthfully what it is. What teachers think it will do is that we'll shame them into doing the right thing. But what it truly does, and what all of the research and the studies have shown, is that what you're doing is that you're telling that kid that they don't belong and that they're bad. And sorry, I'm a type 1 diabetic, so anytime my blood sugar gets too low, I just get a little candy. It's really great. Honestly, it's the best one. What you're telling them, especially when students like, oftentimes when there are students who struggle with behavior, are coming from homes where it's high trauma, are coming from, could be special ed, like undiagnosed special ed. They could be going through some situational trauma. You don't know, right? And so when students act out or students have bad behavior, and you are publicly shaming them, like, go put your clip down, that's not what we do. Students internalize that to, they can't separate their behavior from who they are. So it's not my behavior was bad, it's I'm bad. I am a bad kid. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'm a bad kid, so I'm just gonna do whatever behavior I'm supposed to do because I'm bad. And nothing I do can be right because I'm bad. And even when I do things that are good, it's an accident because I'm a bad kid. And that's a really hard cycle to break once kids feel and learn that they're bad. So it actually, downward clicks do a lot of harm and cause more trauma for students than they are helpful. They're really great for kids who are good, right? Like, it gives recognition to kids who are good, which is something that we should be doing, right? There's students who you feel like are always doing the right thing and never get recognized for it because you're too busy dealing with bad behavior or bad kids, right? That's why I do allow clip up charts. Like, everybody's on green, everybody stays on green, but if the kid who's like super extra good gets to go up, and then gets to go up enough to where like we call their parents for like a positive referral, or they get a token or whatever.
Note home.
Yeah, a positive note home. Those are fine, but you never want to do publicly putting down charts.
And if anyone is covering this theory yet, what theory would we maybe think about when we're talking about this idea of children getting stuck in that self-fulfilling prophecy? Is anyone covering it? Starts with an S. Oh, stereotype. Threat? Someone's covering it. I've seen it on the list. But anyways, Claude Steele, stereotype threat, is exactly what she's talking about. It's students that start identifying with the bad portion and seeing themselves as bad children, and therefore they fulfill it.
And oftentimes that's super cultural too. Bad behavior can be really cultural, right? So you're talking about a culture like there's some African American cultures where how adults interact with each other is to be like you are the loudest. If you want your ideas heard, then you talk over that person, right? It's not bad. That's how they interact with each other. And so if you have a student that comes from a culture like that, what they're going to do when they are super pumped about sharing something that they have is that they're just going to shout it out, right? And if your first response to that is to shame, that is not what we do in this classroom. And if you want to be here, you have to raise your hand. I'm bad. What I know is bad. And I'm not going to join, right, anymore because I'm bad. So you have to be really careful about that. And making sure that you've taught them a procedure for your room. Like, doesn't mean that they can yell out, right? It means that you've taught them clear procedures for your room that show them here, in this space, this is the procedure for that. And I want to hear what you have to say. but this is how you go about it, right? And if you haven't done that, and your first response is to shame or to clip down, they're going to internalize that as shame. And I don't know, did I cover? I don't even know what this slide says. Meeting, we did talk about it. Like failing to meet expectations is not shamed. It's just retaught and retaught enough positively that they learn it. Now, doesn't mean you can't hold them accountable if you clearly taught the behavior expectations and it's not being met, right? I think that that's a problem that teachers have. They think like, oh, well, these kids are just getting away with it, right? Once you've clearly taught behavior expectations, there can be a plan for addressing students who don't meet behavior expectations. And that would be like tier 2 or tier 3 intervention, right? So you have the behavior, tier 1 would be teaching behavior expectations to everybody. And then students who need more prompting or more help get it in tier 2 intervention and tier 3 intervention. And that means that you're teaching more intensely and more directly to students who might need more help meeting behavior expectations. And that would be students who have trauma or students who have ADHD, right? That would be more direct, how they can engage in proper behavior. And you teach that to them more directly, right? They need more help. So you teach it more intensely in tier 2, and then get even more intensely in tier 3 intervention.
So guys, you made some skills there.
Cool.
I don't want you to fall over. But I'll share with you about what I did with, remember the video I showed you last week, and there's a little redheaded boy in the front, and I said, he really put me through the ringer, but he sure loved movement time, right? So that little dude, his name was Colton, and Colton, what we ended up doing with him was on his desk, because he had, I would say undiagnosed, but definitely some ADHD and trouble focusing and just trouble getting from this point of the day to the next point of the day. It wasn't like he was trying to get to the end of the day. He was just trying to get to first recess without having a behavior issue. So what we did is I had a little chart, which is a little grid, and we wrote his name on it, a bunch of exciting little things on it, and it would be taped to his desk, and this was daily with him. If he made it through carpet time, circle time, paying attention and doing all of the behaviors that he needed to do to be there and not have to be removed from the situation, because when he would have a hard time, it was usually like very distracting. So he would have to be like back by me, sitting next to me. So my goal was to keep him on the carpet with everyone, right? And so if he made it through that time, then we'd walk over to his desk and I would say like, oh, great work, Colton, let's put a stamp. And so he got a stamp just for making it through carpet time. And then he got a stamp for just making it through math. And then another stamp of making it all the way to recess, getting out of, coming back from recess and having a good report. So it was minute by minute almost at some point. But that for him was really reinforcing because he could see it in front of him happening, right?
So, right, I think sometimes teachers, you'll see this when you get placed at your placement, right? Teachers are like, oh, I don't have, like, it's really intensive for one kid, for me to give so much attention to one kid, right? Like, little redheaded whatever, Colton, redheaded whatever. Like he needs a lot of intervention and he needs a lot of help. And a lot of your time as a teacher is going to have to go to teaching Colton about how to be successful at school. But just like you would do if a student was really far behind in math, a lot of your time is going to go to their instruction in math, right? And if a student is three years behind in reading, you're going to do reading intervention with them, right? You're going to do tier 2 and tier 3 reading intervention with them. And so I think a lot of times teachers are like, I don't have the time to teach a kid how to behave, right? They should just know it. But the truth is that kids don't know. And some, like 90, so when you talk about tiers, none of these markers work. You have tier 1, right, which is what everybody gets. So it's like a cake, right? If you think about a cake, 90% of your students, once you teach tier 1, it's 90%. Like 90% of your students are going to be able to do it.
after you've taught it one time, right? Or maybe 2 times, right? But then there's still 10% of students who are not going to get it. No, checking. 10%, right?
Tier 2.
So then, do you just say, well, it's not my problem that they didn't get it? No, of course you would never say that as a teacher, right? It's 100% your problem. And so the last 10% need more instruction, right? And it's the same thing that we talk about when we talk about excellent reading instruction, excellent writing instruction, excellent math instruction, right? Some students need intervention. Some students need tier 2. And some students, so it's about 8% here and about 2% here. And I think a lot of times teachers feel like, well, it's behavior. I don't have to teach that. If they didn't get it the first time, it's just not my problem, right? And we would never say that. We'd never say that for math, we'd never say it for reading, and we don't say it for behavior. So, am I the cake topper?
That's the cake.
I'm so cute.
Behavior from A to Z.
Those are my initials.
Market
That's
that. Market that.
Yeah, I should just start making programs now. That's how I'm gonna earn all my money. Because it's not an education.
No, we're still here. We love it, right?
It's being better. You get paid a little more when you're an administrator than when you're a teacher. So that's so bad.
Oh, you know what else with Colton? Like, so how you said you like to talk to the students about how something made them feel. I did the thing with him where if he had a day before, maybe where it was a really rough day or behaviorally for him, I would have him draw a picture. What was yesterday like for you? How did you feel? Can you draw me a picture of that? I have a lot of scribbles, but there was him, but there was a lot of scribbles, and I asked him to tell me about it, and he told me, well, I'm mad, and I didn't have a good time, and I got an argument with so-and-so, and so that's what all this is. And I said, okay, well, how can I want you to start thinking about what this picture will look like on a good day for you, and I want us to aim for that. And eventually he had that good day, and we drew that picture. And so what we would do, I actually have them in the classroom. Sometimes I would be like, Colton, which day, which one are you going for? Which drawing? How do you want to feel? So that was another way, because he was a big drawer and he loved it.
And the truth is that even your student who is like top of the top tier 2, like tier 3, right? Like they're just like, they're so challenging. Their behavior is a nightmare, right? Like you tried everything you can think of. Even that kid wants to feel good, wants to feel successful at school. That kid wants, no kid wants to feel bad about themselves. No kid wants to feel unsuccessful, right? So even that kid who maybe they have oppositional defiance disorder, or maybe they have, right? Like that kid still wants to feel successful and still wants to learn. That's the truth, right? So how do we get them there is the tier 2 and the tier 3 intervention.
And this is you really more than a teacher, right?
Yeah, so your job as a teacher would be, you're definitely responsible for tier 1 instruction, and you're usually responsible for tier 2 instruction. So tier 2, let's pass this slide and I'll talk more about tier 2 instruction, because these are things that I would hold, that generally I would also hold a teacher responsible for, as at least 1 or 2 of these things, right? So first thing I ask when a student gets sent to my office is like, what are the behavior? Like, have you taught tier 1 first, right? Like, let me know. Like, I want to make sure you've taught tier 1. And then I'm going to ask you, like, what tier 2 interventions are you doing for this kid? Like, especially if he's a continued behavior problem for you. Or have you done tier 2, right? So does he have a behavior plan? Do you have a star chart for this kid, right? Like, do you have any sort of like check-in, right? Like with Cassie, she was doing the drawings, right? Or she was doing like a behavior chart per kid. What are you doing to make this kid successful is basically what I'm gonna ask you when you send a kid to the office, right? Do you have any of these? And these are all like pretty standard things, right? Behavior, friendship agreements. So like if 2 kids are particularly having a hard time in the classroom being kind to each other, you would sit them down, you would talk to them about their struggles, like why is it hard for you to be kind to Johnny?
then you'd come up with a list of agreements that the kindergartners would sign, right? So like, I'm only gonna use nice words when I talk to Johnny, and Johnny's only gonna use nice words when he talks to me, and then the kids sign that, and that's their friendship agreement. And even kindergartners can do that. It gets more complicated as you move up the grades, right? But that would be an example of a type 2 intervention. And so like a student-teacher agreement, like Johnny really has a hard time raising his hand in class. So my student-teacher agreement with him is gonna be like, he gets to stand in the back of the classroom, or he gets a bouncy ball to sit on, he gets alternative seating, and his promise to me is that he's gonna try, that he's only gonna call out 3 times or less in the day. And if he does 3 times or more, this is what happens. Like, those are student-teacher agreements, right? So you're giving the student something, the student's promising to give you something. These are all examples of tier 2 interventions. And the teacher is usually responsible for those. And then tier 3 intervention would be office responsibility. So like a formalized behavior plan would be something that's written by the office or by your special education staff, is agreed to by the parents, is agreed to by the administrator. It's very formalized. It's called a BIP, or behavior intervention plan. And that's not like a star chart that you see in the classroom. That's like a formalized document, a legally binding document that a student and a family agrees to, and the administration agrees to, and the teacher agrees to. And then you would do either an SST, a student study team. So districts call them different things, but you would start with a student study team to decide. It's where the administrator meets, the parents meet, special education would be part of that, and you decide what a student needs to be successful, and that's like 2% of students maybe need that. So counseling services, mental health services, special ed testing, or a 504 plan. And a 504 plan is like a student health plan, so things like mental illness can sometimes fall under that. Any illness like long-term, type 1 diabetes would fall under that. ADHD falls under a 504 plan. So what accommodations are you making for the student because they have a health impairment? Any health impairment falls under a 504 plan. And usually the principal is responsible for mitigating a 504 plan. And then if you think that special education testing is warranted, you would do an IEP. You would test the students, and if they qualify for that, then they would have an IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Plan. And essentially, you're saying that their disability is severe enough they can't. We're not holding them to the same standards as other typically developing students, and then so what we are holding them to is we're trying to get, they have an individualized plan with goals that they try to meet every year. And that's what you're teaching them instead of the regular.
Can you say a word on special ed and like special ed testing, and basically the teachers can't diagnose?
Yes, so you're not a doctor. You can actually not a medical doctor. So you can't classify kids as having special needs, right? You're not a doctor and you don't know. So no classroom teacher is qualified to say, your kid has ADHD. You would never ever, you would be super fired if you said that to a teacher or to a parent as a teacher. You cannot say things like that. You could say, I've seen your child displays things that I've seen similar to kids who've previously been diagnosed with ADHD. You could say that. You could say, I have serious concerns about your child's development. Talk to me about your child's development. That's usually by the time you're there, you're a principal, you're here. You're in a student study team. You're not meeting with them after school to talk about that. You have tried a lot of other things before you're telling a parent that you have serious concerns about their child, right? Talk to your principal, talk to your special ed team before you would ever talk to a parent. Especially if, like, kindergarten and first grade students will come in with undiagnosed special needs, right? A lot of time that's the case. So, autism can show around 3, but it can also come later or be so subtle that it's undiagnosed until 7 or 8, right? So you can have concerns about a kid, you wouldn't bring those to a parent until you've talked to your administration, you've talked to your special ed team, you've talked to mental health services.
Thank you. That's just, I don't want any of you to get fired in the future, so.
Yeah, you're
Good to know, right?
You're not a doctor, right? You don't know if you're, like, you can't say to a parent, but your kid obviously has ADHD. It will be so clear to you. Like, the truth is, I could tell you, right? I can go into a classroom for half an hour now at this point and be like, maybe that kid, right? Like, but you can never say that to a parent. And you could say you want to help them get to a place where they can see the behaviors for themselves and see the struggles, and then go through the appropriate doctor channels to get their kid diagnosed, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. I just put this in here because it's like what teachers need to know, right? Like, that's the hardest thing, especially as a first year teacher. When do I send a kid to the office and when do I not? Because it's really hard to know the difference, right? And sometimes, so major level referrals would go to the office, and they're few, right? Fighting, physical fighting is an office referral. If they strike another kid to the point where they have caused physical injury to another student. Now, I will say that oftentimes, here's what I'm gonna say to you. Kids push on the playground all the time, right? And there is, as a teacher, you will learn this, and it's very nuanced. There's a difference between a fight and fighting on the playground, right? Like a push or a extra hard, game of tag.
Chapter 11. It's called rough and tumble play.
And it's common, right? Nothing is going to make your principal more frustrated than after every recess, 5 kids in the office for rough and tumble play. Because rough and tumble play is not an office level referral. It's developmentally appropriate for kids in elementary school to play like that. Now, a threat or severe aggression to the point of causing harm is different. And even rough and tumble play, oftentimes as a teacher, you might give a timeout or you might separate them. Like, doesn't mean there's no consequences. It's just not an office level referral, right? What would be an office level referral is causing bodily injury to another or causing an unsafe behavior. So if throwing a chair is an office level referral, right? Anytime that a student or a teacher could be physically harmed or is threatened, their physical harm is threatened, that is a level as an office referral, right? You can't threaten violence, you can't, or, even intentional, like, sometimes kids will throw chairs.
I had Melvin in my class, and he was very young, and his reaction sometimes, he was going through some trauma, I think, at home, was he would push back in his chair until he fell out of the chair, and then he would lay on the floor and be upset and kick the desk to knock the desks over.
Yeah, so that's hard, right? That's nuanced. Like, if you feel like you can't handle it yourself, you should call the office. If you feel like it will pass and the kid is upset and angry, and you think you could let it run its course with minimal interruption to your learning, I would do so.
In that case, when they have a child on the floor kicking things and screaming, best way to remove the child from the classroom.
So you don't remove a child from the classroom, you evacuate the classroom. If you feel like, let's say you had a child who was really aggressive, was throwing things, you felt threatened, you felt like your children could not be safe, right? You don't remove the student, you remove the class. So you would evacuate the classroom, outside, to the playground, to the quad, wherever. It's your responsibility to keep other students safe, but we cannot touch students, right? We can't grab them, we can't remove them. I can't be physical with a student, right? Even as a principal, I can't remove the student from the classroom. So you remove the class, you evacuate the classroom. The other things were like property damage, if they're graffitiing or ripping books, you can call, they're destroying things. gang affiliation, it's an office level referral, even in elementary school, it happens. Or obviously possession of controlled substance.
So I have a friend who is a kindergarten teacher, and she had kids that would she had curtains, and like a kid would climb up and like swing from the curtain rod, and like she said that she wasn't allowed to get him down safely. And so in that situation where it's a danger to themselves, are you allowed to
Absolutely. So what you would do in that situation, I would call the office. I would call the office for that because they're harming themselves, they could potentially harm themselves. But I would shadow.
Yeah.
Don't fall!
Yeah, okay.
But I think in that instance, the removing the evacuation of the class would probably negate the behavior
Yeah.
because
So
the
that's the-
attention.
Right. So when we're talking about behaviorism, the intention there is to gain their attention, right? They
So
want
it's a
the attention.
reinforcement.
And if you just evacuate the class, usually the attention, they're like, well, this is over, right? And I'll sit down. Then I can get them to the office, right? Once they're calm. When a child is escalated to the point where they're throwing, they're climbing, you're not going to reason with that child, right? There is no, right? So guys probably, have you ever heard this, right? So children have these tiny little brains, and this is your spinal cord, which is your impulse control, right? So our brains, well, not yours quite yet, but my brain, Cassie's brain, are totally flipped over. We have full control over our reactions. We have full control over our emotions, right? Kids don't have this yet. Their brain is like this, right? So their brains are growing. So when they are sad, scared, angry, frustrated, they just flip, right? And then they're being controlled by their child
Your
brain.
lizard brain.
Yeah. And it's fight or flight, and they are gonna scream, cry, throw, injure, hurt, run, whatever they feel like they need to do to feel safe until their body is able to calm down enough to put their lid back on, right? When a kid is here, a kid is throwing something, injuring other kids, screaming, crying, hiding, running away from school, you're not going to reason with that child. There is nothing you can do except for tell them they're safe, they're okay, they're fine, and then once they are calm, then you can take them to then you can do something with them, right?
Reason with them.
You can talk to them, you can discipline them, you can reason with them in any way. But talking to a kid who is crying on the ground that
Oh, when they do that noodle thing too.
oh yeah.
Oh, I knew that at preschool because we picked them up, but children do that. Yeah. They're impossible.
There's nothing to be done, right? So it has to wait. You have to wait until the fight or flight has passed. So then you're doing when a behavior like that's happening, then you're just doing crowd control, right? You're keeping them safe. You're keeping them not injuring themselves or others until they calm down enough to be talked to.
And can we add in just about what was it? Induction in this point.
Oh yeah.